Do you condemn it?
It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy,
the entire situation is a tragedy.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson was on CNN with Dana Bash, where he refused to condemn the 17-year-old Kenosha shooter that killed 2 people and severely injured a third. Now, this video is wild. I'll get to the video. I'm also going to get to a breakdown of right-wing terrorism and how it's been ignored by the Trump administration. But, you know, before I even get to this clip, this really is the perfect showcase of how different the Democratic Party and the GOP are in terms of their relation to their base. So you have the Democratic Party, which won't even support a policy like Medicare for All, which has 69% support among all voters and 88% support among Democratic voters. Democrats won't even back Medicare for All. Yet on the other side, you have Republicans who won't even condemn a murderer because he's a Trump supporter. Watch this.
We saw 2 people killed by a Trump supporter in your home state of Wisconsin, in Kenosha last week. And these deaths do appear to be the result of clashes between the right and the left. So doesn't the president have a responsibility to call out violence regardless of who is committing it?
Yeah, and the governor has responsibility to accept the surge in manpower so that people, so that citizens don't believe they've got to protect their own property.
I'm asking about the president. We can talk about
matters
the
in their own
next.
hands, because that's really what happened. No, what the president did was he offered to surge manpower resources so the violence could end. The governor did not accept that day. That night, tragically, 2 people lost their lives because citizens took matters in their own hand. I'm not for vigilantism. I'm not sure that's what was happening. People felt because the governor and local officials were looking for help. The governor did not accept the help, and so there was not the resolve to end the rioting. And so people took matters in their own hands, and that's what ended up happening. People die. You have to get control of the situation. And the way you do it is what happened in Milwaukee, in Kenosha, where local officials said, please, we want help. We want manpower. The president offered. The governor finally accepted it. And now at least the streets are not violent. We still have the protests. The businesses are still shuttered. Those individuals' constitutional rights are being violated because they can't operate their business and enjoy a living.
Senator, that
so again, you have to look at the entire situation.
The 17-year-old accused of committing those 2 murders was a Trump supporter.
It's a tragedy.
Do you condemn that?
It's a tragedy.
Do you condemn it?
It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy,
the entire situation is a tragedy. Listen, I don't want to see any loss of life. It's a tragedy, and the way you prevent these tragedies is you support law enforcement.
Tragedy could be a car accident.
You calm the situation. You allow for peaceful protest, but you don't allow peaceful. You don't allow peaceful protest to turn siege into siege.
I mean, what do you say to that? He just flat out refuses to condemn a murderer because the guy's a Trump supporter. And Dana Bash's question there, I mean, before she even begins, she frames the entire discussion as clashes between the right and the left. There was a peaceful protest going on in Kenosha because a cop had shot someone in the back 7 times, shot a black man in the back 7 times, Jacob Blake. So there was protest the next day over criminal justice. Then you have a white militia come in, including this 17-year-old from out of state, crosses state lines with his rifle, ends up murdering 2 people, severely injuring a third, and a senator can't even condemn that. Now, a part of this, of course, is also having to do that with him not wanting to saddle conservatives with the reality that this is coming out of their party. So if he condemns the shooter, I guess the thinking goes, well, if he condemns it, then that means he's owning what happened. That it's a result of right-wing extremism that is bred out of his party and his ideology. So he doesn't. I mean, part of the reason he doesn't want to condemn is because he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to take this on. But that's the reality. Right-wing extremism has been on the rise since Trump took power. And it was already on the rise before under Obama. So let me show you first, of course, what Trump hasn't done. I mean, I think I've covered this even before in other stories, but this is an obvious. They tried to get Trump to care about right-wing terrorism. He ignored them. Officials at the Department of Homeland Security waged a years-long internal struggle to get the White House to pay attention to the threat of violent domestic extremists. Frustrated, they gave up on the Trump administration. So I'm almost positive I covered this in a video before, but yeah, there's been a rise in right-wing terrorism, and Trump, of course, has refused to do anything. I mean, you can go back to 2017, of course, him saying, find people on both sides when there were white nationalists on one side. So yeah, this part's obvious, but a lot of people really don't know about the increases. So this is data from, let me just get their name here, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. So this is a nonprofit bipartisan organization that just looks at the data and discusses and puts it into graph form and shows you what's going on. So here you have from 1994 at the beginning here to 2020. The light blue, the bar at the top here, this is right-wing terrorism. So left-wing is the green one, and in the early 2000s there was environmental terrorism, I guess, was attributed to left-wing terrorism, but that came down. And then religious, of course, they're going to, make that a focus as well. But right-wing terrorism, clearly, you see here from about 2014 and on, and even well before, but 2014 and on, terrorism is dominated by right-wing terrorism. And 2020, it's almost completely right-wing terrorism and a tiny bit of religious terrorism here. And you go down to the graph here, it's another way to view it. So the blue line here, the big one, massive rise in right-wing terrorism from 2013 onward. And this continues to happen because by the way, Obama also didn't take this seriously. He did a little more to combat it, but still, clearly not enough compared to the actual portion of terrorism that right-wingers make up. So Obama didn't do enough. Then Trump, of course, isn't doing anything. And you see this massive increase. And the other issue, of course, is the media. The media refusing to make this the focus. So you see that reflected in the numbers. Recent YouGov poll. This came out today. How concerned, if at all, are you about the threat of domestic terrorism in America from right-wing extremists? So overall, only 37% are concerned, even though it makes up the vast majority of terrorism. Now, if the question was about religious terrorism or ISIS, you can bet that number would be higher because of how the media portrays terrorism, how it's discussed. So you see here, Democrats, only half of them think right-wing extremism is concerning. Then Republicans, of course, the lowest at 21%, Independents 32%, other 40%, not sure 21%. So clearly the media here not doing its job in reflecting the reality when it comes to right-wing terrorism. And you're seeing this is also a major piece of it. This from The Guardian. White supremacists and militias have infiltrated police across the U.S., report says. A former FBI agent has documented links between serving officers and racist militant activities in more than a dozen states. And I'll link to, of course, all these links below the video. You can go through all the data yourself, read all these articles yourself if you want to dive a little deeper. But this is a major piece of the puzzle. And here's one example of that. This from Spectrum News, baynews9.com. Whistleblower says California deputy killed teen to join department's gang. So there was a recent shooting in Los Angeles of an 18-year-old. And Deputy Art Gonzalez said more than a dozen deputies have matching tattoos that identify them as executioners. These are officers with matching tattoos calling themselves the executioners. This is a gang within a gang. Yet, how much coverage is this really going to get? The way that the media both treats right-wing terrorism and the police is with kid gloves. Yet, if you have, one person who describes himself to be on the left, do something that is out of the ordinary, they all freak out and act like, oh my God, Antifa's the biggest deal. If Antifa was the biggest deal here, was the actual threat, then why isn't left-wing terrorism higher on this list? It's the green bar down here. The actual threat is the right-wing terrorism up here. Yet the media does not do its job in communicating that. And it's now gotten to the point where even senators are able to get away with not condemning a murderer because they're a Trump supporter.